So here we go. I'm going to make some focaccia, courtesy of the recipe from Rosa, Levy, Beranbaum, the Bread Bible. It's an awesome recipe, so I'm going to make it. Let's see. First thing, get the mixing bowl there, zero it out, put it to grams, because it's so much easier to work with. So this recipe requires 390 grams of all-purpose. Where am I at here? $3.92, close enough. Now for the instant yeast. The recipe calls for 1.2 grams, but measuring cups are, or measuring spoons are easier, I think, in this case because of the low volume. My scale only goes down to a single gram. All right, so here we have my 3/8 of a teaspoon going into the flour mixture, and that will be it. I'll have to mix that up, and then I'll need to grab some, say, 80-degree water to, well, again, I'll be weighing out the water. It'll be 442 grams. At this point, I'm going to measure out the sugar and salt. I need 3 grams of sugar and basically the same volume, not weight. I'm going to use measures as opposed to weights just because of the accuracy of my scale. So here we are. 3/4 of a teaspoon each of sugar and salt. The weights of each are different, so I just measured them out using teaspoons. All right, so I've got my water. It's about 84 degrees, which is close enough. I've got 20 degrees to work with. So here we go. So I need 442 grams of water. I can pull some out. So in the end, all I had to do was pull less than a teaspoon of water to get it to the 442 weight. And now on to the mixing. So I do have the flour and the yeast in the bowl. I'm just going to mix it up for a couple minutes at setting number 2. And then I'll slowly start adding the water and then pump it up to setting number 4 for 20 minutes. So at this point, our bread and yeast mixture has been mixed up, and then I'm going to add the water slowly but surely at number 2, and then after it's all mixed up, I'm going to turn it to number 4, and I usually stand by the mixer because my machine walks for 20 minutes. As you can see at this point, it's pretty soupy. This is just the beginning of what it's going to look like. Towards the end, it will look like soft mozzarella, which is the consistency which you want it. So I'm just going to put this up to number 4 and stand here. So at this point we're about 10 minutes into the mixing of the water and the dough, or the flour and the yeast. As you can see, it's starting to turn to be a little stringy. I will have to stop the paddle at a couple times to knock the dough down from the paddle so it doesn't creep up into the machine itself. And it's a waiting game from here. At this point, close to the 20-minute mark, the dough will start walking up the paddle. So I'll stop it and knock it down again. Right now I've got it at speed setting 2. The normal setting for this is speed setting 4. I just wanted to give you a better shot of what this sucker looks like when it's almost finished. So I'm just stopping it right now to see the texture of the dough, and it looks pretty good. I'll be adding in the 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and sugar respectively, and that's it. It did start climbing up to here and getting into the attachment mechanism, the spring attachment mechanism, so that's one thing towards the end that you might want to keep an eye on. Otherwise you'll get black gook in the dough. So this is the final look after I've added the sugar and salt and mixed for about 3 minutes. You know, it looks like pretty soft mozzarella. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scrape it out into a container that's already got some olive oil in it, and then I'll put some olive oil on top and wait for it to double in size, which is going to be at least 5 hours. At this point I put the dough into a plastic container, put the lid on, put some oil on top, and marked the level with a piece of tape right there. So when it is double that size, we're ready to go to the next stage, which is putting out onto a pan and letting it rise double again. Right now I just have to find a spot in the house that's 75 to 80 degrees and let it go through the first proof. So I poured the dough out onto a 15 by 22 pan. I put some parchment paper underneath, and I'm just going to let it rest for about 10 more minutes, and then I'll try stretching it out again to make it a little larger, a little more even. And then I will let it set for at least an hour or so, and then I'll bake it, and after that point then I will put it in the oven. So I've stretched out the dough as much as I want to right now in the pan, and I just covered it up with some greased saran wrap, and I'm just going to let it sit until it's doubled approximately twice, and then I'll put it on the oven on some baking stones. So that's it for now. I've got to get some rosemary out of the garden and put it on top as well. So this is the focaccia just before I put it in the oven. The oven is set at 425 for at least an hour before putting it in. And there's the baking tiles that I'll be putting it on. So after about 10 to 12 minutes on the baking stone lined bottom shelf of the oven, this is what it looks like. I'm going to sop up some of the extra olive oil just cause, and then I'll put on the fleur de sel afterwards. And that is it for the making and baking of focaccia.